Okay, if everybody can take a seat, we can start. We also have some people attending virtually, so out of respect for their timing, it would be good that we start. Okay, let's start. Welcome everybody in the room. We will be over 240 participants here in Berlin during the next 2 days, so welcome to Berlin. And also a warm welcome to the people who are following the common session from 9 to 11 online. We have also 150 people who registered for the live stream. So we are in total around 400 people listening to this first common session. And I would say willkommen in Berlin. Berlin is a very interesting city, as you will experience also tonight during the historical tour we will make. But I think it's also fair to say that, again, we're living in very challenging times. The geopolitical situation is not good. The climate change is a big problem. We all have to face the consequences of that, and we will at length discuss this also during the 2 sessions, how telcos can help to overcome the problem. But we also want to look at the glass as half full. I think there is also still a positive side to our business. We really can still focus on growth, obviously in a sustainable way, but we will discuss ecosystem innovation, going into other verticals as a telco and not just being a bit pipe. We will discuss Metaverse, which perhaps still is a bit of a hype now, but a lot of research and developments are being done in the field. Obviously, we will not avoid talking about ChatGPT and AI, which is, I think, now the next big thing of many industries, including ours. And we will also talk about energy reduction, as we all have faced huge problems in cost of the energy prices as of last year. So we have a full packed agenda. I will not go through all the details. It's very good to go to the website we have created, gathering.etis.org. All the information with all the details, also per working group, are to be found on the website. So if you have questions related to the agenda, it's best to first take a look over there. And we come now to the agenda of this session. I will not go through all the speakers. I will introduce every speaker as they will speak. So I would like to give the floor now to Paul Slot, Executive Vice President Infrastructure at KPN and also ETIS Chairman.
Thank you. Yeah, as Wim said, welcome here in Berlin. And it's great to be here with so many people, 240 at least, and people connected remotely, so it must be like a record. Second time after Corona, last year Rome, a very warm Rome, and now a great Berlin, also with great weather. And it's a special place where we are here. It's a place with a special position in history, a city that did undergo a lot of change. And I think the history of Berlin starts somewhere in the 13th century, where at the River Spree it was a very small village. And there was nothing there that you could relate to the big capital that it is today. And if you then fast forward to last century, the 20th century, Berlin found itself at the center of 2 huge world wars. Those world wars would forever shape the destiny of this great city. World War I would bring economic hardship and social unrest, and leading to the fall of the German emperor. And after that came the dark period under Nazi Adolf Hitler. And Berlin was the capital of Nazi Germany. But also architectural changes. The Reichstag, Olympic Stadium. We had a walk here last night and we saw the Reichstag, huge building. But it's not only about architecture, obviously. It was a terrible period that also ended with the bombing of the center of the city, which you can still see. And the challenges didn't end there, because then there was the Cold War. And who remembers the Berlin Wall? Some of you may have already seen it during the visit, the remainder of the Berlin Wall, created in 1961. But then on November the 9th, 1989, it was the end of the Berlin Wall. The wall came down, and that was also the start of a new period for this city. A new city with reunification of families, a new country, you could basically see. The two countries coming together. So there has been so much change here. And after the fall of the wall, actually Germany, especially Berlin, did rebuild itself again. And therefore you could say that Germany is a sort of example of how we, as humans, deal with change. How we deal with change on a global level, on a national level, on a local level, but also on a personal level. Or how we're able to deal with change on a business level, on an industry level. Because that's what we're here also for today, talking about change and how to deal with that. Talking about change that we're anticipating, but also change that we're not anticipating. Because one thing is for sure, there is change. And over the last couple of gatherings, we have been talking about a lot of topics. We tried to reimagine all the topics. Last night, we spoke about blockchain, big data, help me out here, AI, simplification, virtualization, IoT, name it, it's all there and we have all been discussing it. And who knows what we will be discussing next year. And if you talk about all this change, I was looking at my screen last week. Anyone knows what this is? Maybe in the back of the room it's a bit difficult to see. But this is what happened in the stock market last Friday. Well, KPN is on top of it, so you can imagine it's an internal KPN message. But yeah, there's some big ones, Deutsche Telekom, -8. But there's also another big one in the US, this, plus 22%. So something happened last Friday. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about it in the working groups. But you may remember that this announced some time ago their cooperation with AWS. They were going to bring everything to the cloud. They're going to start it in Las Vegas. But last Friday there was a rumor that was initiated by Bloomberg. And until today, I understand Amazon is still denying the rumor. But actually the rumor is that Bloomberg started the rumor, but Amazon is going to start providing mobile services and using the DIS network as the vehicle to do so. And it was very well received for the DIS, from an analyst perspective, for the DIS company, but for the others it was seen as a threat. And immediately analysts started to write reports about this development. You may have seen it yourself, because what does it mean for an average telco here in Europe? Is it a threat? Is it a challenge? Who knows? And you can say DIS has an empty network. You can say, well, in the US, the RPU is much higher than over here in Europe. So there are a lot of changes, and it's not going to impact us. But who knows? It might impact us. And that's something we have to think about. Just one example of change that's here today. And I was preparing for my speech. I thought, what can I tell about Berlin? Now yeah, like every student, what did I do? I asked ChatGPT to write me a nice paper, a 2-minute summary of the history of Berlin. Now, there's an easy way of using ChatGPT. I was reading this article this morning about schools. They really have a problem with how to deal with it, because you cannot forbid it. But yeah, it's not about the impact for the students. There's much more impact of AI. And I think last year, this year, is the first time you really see the huge potential impact of AI on call centers, on engineering, on code checking, Basically, all the work our people are doing is going to be impacted by AI. Could we have foreseen this? Well, there were some people who did foresee it. This is a quote by a guy called Dr. Wiener, 1961, and he refers to an earlier quote. I will read it. If the machines become more and more efficient and operate at a higher and higher psychological level, the catastrophe foreseen by Butler of the dominance of the machine comes nearer and nearer. And what did Butler say? And when did he say it? That's actually 1863. 1863. Can you imagine? And he was asking the question, what sort of creator man's next successor in the supremacy of the earth is likely to be? And the answer to that question to him was hostile creators, leading to a declaration. War to the death should be instantly proclaimed against them. Every machine of which sort should be destroyed by the well-wisher of his species. 1863, there were people already thinking about the possible negative impact of machines and what we today call artificial intelligence. So there's a lot we can prepare for in a proactive manner, because if someone back 150 years ago could already foresee some kind of development, who are we that we cannot foresee what's going to happen the next 10 years? But yeah, that's easy to say, because there's more to change. Because I can talk about the past, I can talk about the present, but what about the future? Any one of you have heard about DNA storage? Anyone? Anyone who already got a farm in their data centers? No. Neither do we. But it's interesting to see, if you read the articles about DNA storage, it's a huge impact. Millions of terabytes can be stored in just 1 gram of DNA. The only problem is, you can store it, but it takes a lot of time to access it. So they still have to figure out how to deal with that. But you see, actually in biology, there seems to be a lot of potential for dealing with some of the problems we have today. And how that's going to work out, we'll see. And it's far away. Yes, it is far away. But just as an example of potential change that's out there in the future. And of course, if you talk about change, there's a lot more to say, because I didn't mention Metaverse, I didn't mention quantum computing, and there's so much more that we can talk about. And last year, and Wim already mentioned it, we spoke about sustainability as our biggest challenge, a challenge of the world, a challenge of us as an industry. And today we are combining that with a question about growth. How can we deal with all these changes, anticipated for changes and non-anticipated changes, in a sustainable manner? How can we deal with them in such a way we can stay in our position as a telco, maybe, probably for sure, doing things different, but ensuring there's growth, there's sustainable growth. And that will be the main theme of the next 1.5 days. And it's great to have an organization like ETIS here sitting together to be able to discuss these kind of things. We have over 17 working groups, of which most of them are joining today and tomorrow in their specific sessions. And some of them are also being combined to ensure that we even share more and more knowledge and experience. And last year, we established 4 new working groups. Obviously, energy reduction task, business continuity, TV content, content also as a very important aspect, and cloud. Cloud was the 4th one. And I'm also proud to be able to say that the team, the ETIS team, has been able to run the ETIS operation in a very efficient and successful manner. That also shows by the new members. We have got 6 new members: Telefonica, Latvia Mobila, Elisa, Telenet, Post Luxembourg, and Sunrise. And I would like to give you all a warm welcome as new member to the ETIS platform, and congratulate the team with actually bringing these new members to ETIS. And as ETIS, we are supported by supporting partners. And there are 3 new ones. I would like to mention them as well, because they're also key in enabling an event like this. Content, Inform, and Lenovo. Thank you for helping us making this possible. Now we're here together with more than 220 participants. I wish you a great conference. I hope you will find some great new insights about sustainable growth, about how to anticipate for the questions that are ahead of us, and how to deal with the questions that we already know that are here today. Thank you, Wim.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And perhaps it's the right moment to immediately dive into possible models of growth. And I'm very happy to introduce again Andrew Collinson, who was in previous gatherings, I think the last one being in Vienna a couple of years ago. And he is EVP and also Chief Research Officer at STL Partners.
Thank
Andrew.
you. Thank you, Wim, and thank you, Paul, and welcome. Good morning, everyone. I'll try that again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, and thank you for the great introductions, guys, because you did two brilliant things. It reminded me what a wonderful group of people there are at ETIS, and also the fact we're in such a beautiful setting. But also, Paul, I think, gave me a fantastic introduction in the sense that he pointed out all of the noise, the fear and the clamour that we hear all of the time in our jobs. And as a chief research officer of STL Partners, this is what I get all the time. I get people coming to talk to me about AI and IoT and all the latest things. And I don't know about you, but the effect it has on my brain is akin to when you walk into a shop with too many things. It kind of freezes. It goes, oh my God, what am I dealing with? I just can't make sense of any of this stuff. So genuinely, a lot of the time I spend just trying to make sense out of what people are saying. And I thought if I could, I would try and bring you some of that this morning, because Paul's done a brilliant job of instilling that terror of all the new things. And I'll try and show you some ideas about how to think about things differently to make sense of it. So I hope you'll give me 15 minutes to try and do that well. Now, I'm going to say quite a lot quite quickly, so apologies. I hope I'll carry everyone with me, but you will get the slides afterwards. So that's a little preamble. So if I don't get to say anything else today, if I get hooked off the stage, not having got further than anything, this is the most important thing I wanted to talk to you about. I wanted to say, stop thinking telecoms, start thinking connected technologies. And I'll try and explain why I think that's so important and why I think it's so helpful. So that's the summary of what I'm going to say today, but I'm going to give you a bit more detail than that, and I'm also going to give you a large pot of cream at the end of it, which will kind of make sense, I hope, by the time we get there. So I'm going to cover, first of all, what customers want, cover some ground we know, talk about it through a new lens, the context of the way the world I think is working now, try and illustrate it with 3 examples, and give you a checklist at the end. I'm going to try and do that in 15 minutes. I don't have a timer, so if someone could tell me when we're about 5 minutes, thank you, Vim, that would be brilliant. So I'm going to go fast now, okay? So are you ready? Okay. So this stuff's obvious, but I'm reminding you of obvious stuff. All enterprises want success, and how they express it, generally you'll recognize these things from your corporate charts that you see at every event. Every enterprise, every business in the world looks at things this way, but they might have slightly different language for it. But we'll come back to this, but these are the things that they want. So, fairly obvious stuff here. Financial, strategic, operational, market-facing is where I've chosen to divide it up today. And you'll recognize some of the words on that list. Consumers, they want success too, and they, all over the world, want pretty much the same things. Financial, physical, psychological, and social success. And again, I've listed some ways to think about it as forms of reference. I'm not dwelling on this because I think you all know this, but I'm putting it in here as context to set up the rest of the conversation. And again, the language and the specifics of this are different. It's different in Papua New Guinea than it is in Berlin, let's say, but people still want the same things. The thing that's really different about the world today, and Paul have referred to some of these factors, is that there are 2 fundamental things going on. Demand is changing, and we're no longer in a world which is purely about growth. And I know this is kind of anathema to say this to some economists, but we're going to have 10 billion people on the planet in about 20 years' time. That's an awful lot of people on a planet that previously had less than 1 billion, a couple of centuries ago. So massive growth. So really, there's a fundamental thing going on, which is, making better use of resources. And resources are a very interesting and useful word. So think about what resources means. A lot of the things I just mentioned are resources in a way: money, time, productivity is a sort of sense of use of time. So what you're seeing is customer needs expressed in terms of making better use of resources. And what resources might you be talking about? As I say, time, power, water, land, money, carbon, all of these things count. And when you're looking at a customer situation, they're typically not just thinking about one, they may be thinking about many. And the other thing that's changed is a bunch of supply changes. So what I'm putting under this heading of connected technologies, communications, insights, and action. And the thing that's really different about the last maybe 10 years of the emergence of these technologies together, and when you think about them, they're really a very good toolkit to try and solve some of the problems about resource availability. So on the one hand, you've got people wanting to make better use of things. And on the other hand, you've got a bunch of things, communications, AI, analytics, automation, that are all very well suited to using, dividing things up, putting them in a different place, routing them in a different way, and sending them to someone else. Sounds like communications, or telecommunications used to sound like. So that's quite an interesting thought, really. Essentially, you've got a toolkit to solve the main problems of the world. Maybe not all of them, but many of them. And we believe this leads to something we call the coordination age. And that customers want coordinated outcomes, and I'm going to show you a few. So I've said healthcare here because we quite often talk about healthcare, but I'll talk about a couple more examples in a minute. A lot of the time what you're seeing deliver them are collaborative multi-party ecosystems. So you're getting into all these, I was nearly said a rude word, words that people use, ecosystems, open, exchange, B2B2X. It all means sharing, basically. It means people sharing information and sharing knowledge in order to achieve the same end. But none of them able to deliver it entirely on their own. And these models now often span the physical and the digital worlds. So maybe 15 years ago, it was all digital. So if you think about, the growth of the internet, a lot of the services that grew in that time were purely digital, financial services, entertainment, and so on. What we're talking about now is sort of the move into a digital world of many other industries, farming, manufacture, logistics, everything is moving into this different way of thinking about things. And guess what? Communications, connected technologies are at the heart of that. And telcos have an interesting position because you've got a national boundaries, generally, well, you may have multinational boundaries, and relationships with government and relationships with any stakeholders. Telecoms are in a very interesting place, or traditional telecoms operators. So we think that's an opportunity opening up, a different opportunity, and it leads to a different way of thinking. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. One that's not really a telecoms example, but I think is a very good sort of scene setter, and 2 that are growing examples of where we see this operating. I'm going to go quite quickly, so apologies but try and I'll do my best to be clear. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Uber. Has everyone heard of Uber and Lyft and all these things, right? Yes? Okay. I'll talk about smart ports and smart stadia. So Uber, founded 13, 14 years ago. So quite a long time ago. Not in the form it was originally envisaged, that it is now. Went public in 2019. How does it work? Demand changes. I'm not doing all the diagrams for this because you all know what it is. But it changes the way taxis work, changes the way transport works. You can see where the ride is. It makes it availability easier. It's efficient. It's quicker. It works in lots of places. You don't need to use your credit card. It's more convenient. So you can see that it's creating a different model. I put cheaper. Well, I'm not sure if it is cheaper. I think, discuss and debate. It might have been 3 or 4 years ago. Whether it is now, I don't know. But you can see it's changed the model. And how did it do it? It used communications. It used mass communication, mass mobile data, but also communications platforms as a service. So the thing, in Uber where you call the driver calls you, or you call the driver, that's a communications platform in there. And it produces, customers get visibility and coordination of details, drivers participate in the model, discuss and debate if that's a good thing. Model spans the physical and the digital world. So the reason I use it is I think it's a very simple example of what does the coordination age look like. Looks like lots of things being brought together and used to produce a common outcome. Telcos don't really benefit from Uber, don't really participate in it apart from the mobile data. Let's talk about a couple of other examples. I'm sorry, this is a bit of I decided not to do a build on this because it's such a complicated chart, it would take me 10 minutes to build it. But you all know what a port is, right? But let's talk about what happens in a port. And I was thinking about this, funny enough, in terms of galleons. I was thinking, in the old days, a galleon would land and heaps of people would heave the goods off the galleon and store it in places, steal quite a lot of it. In more recent times, demand, highly unionized environments. Eventually carries off on carts into the rest of the economy, and I'm sure that was what it was like in Berlin at some point in the 13th century, according to Paul's delve into ChatGPT. But now, what is happening in the big ports is you've got container ships with massive containers on them, many of which have got trackers in them, unloaded by, can be automated cranes, not always, but increasingly automated. Brought, things moved about in the ports by AGVs, automatic guided vehicles, gantry cranes, storage, and then travel, then go off into the rest of the world through lorries. And this is enormously connected. And what you're seeing is increasing penetration of technologies like private networks in ports and edge compute in ports. Why? Because you've got a high demand for low latency, high intensity computing on site. They don't want to stick it up in the cloud. They want to keep it secure and local. And you've got satellite connections with the container shipping, tracking where it's going. And you've got Internet of Things type tracking in the lorries going out the other end. So the result of this is that you've got a massively different ability to monitor where cargo is, to understand where it is, to possibly reduce wastage, to get faster transit, to create better, or not necessarily just in time, but better communication through the supply chain. Now, it doesn't all work at the moment, as we all know, from the supply chain, but here's the technology changing it. And then on the other side, you've got all the communications in here, edge, Internet of Things, private networks, etc., changing it. Consequence, customers getting clearer visibility and improved economics through the system, as well as more predictable deliveries. You've got shipping and logistics companies, so you've got multiple players participating in this. It's not just about one party, it's many parties playing. And again, the model is spanning the physical and the digital world. And telcos can benefit in this, maybe, some. Again, ports, there aren't that many ports, and not everyone can succeed in a port, but I'm using it as an example, and I'm going to show you another example. And I think what we're seeing at the moment is we're seeing the examples coming through these sort of formats because they're highly concentrated uses of technology. My view is that what's going to happen is that they will be the testing ground for this. This will be where new technologies will emerge. Things will become more efficient and more useful, and then able for better use in everyday life. Let's talk about smart stadium. So a stadium, apologies, this is a bit of a busy graphic, but you know what a sports stadium looks like. And this is the kind of example we're starting to see people looking at in Formula One, some of the US sports in particular. Formula One's a very good example because you have such a huge group of people descending on a place for a period of time. But anyway, so you've got the spectators starting to use AR and consuming game content on devices while they're at the games. You've got the sports team using the information that they're getting off the pitch. You see all the players are wearing all the tracking devices and they're being filmed and people are doing analysis on it all the time. A lot of the time now, so you've got the cameras, both from a TV perspective but also from the analysis perspective. You've also got all of these other stakeholders involved in the stadium environment. So starting to talk about really quite a complex multi-party environment. You've got broadcasters, retailers looking to understand how they should best use their footfall and how many people to expect. Security, event space owners, facilities management. So you're starting to have a lot of stakeholders involved in this. But that's just in the stadium. Outside the stadium, you've got the audience, potentially also consuming it by in XR type environments. I'm fascinated to hear what we hear later about the Metaverse piece, but just to set that up a little bit, that's a place where people are really interested in using it in sporting environments. Betting companies, advertisers, transport, governing bodies. So, transport, why are they interested? Well, because they don't want to have a logjam. They want to know how to manage the traffic, etc. They want to know what other facilities are going to be used. So, sorry, it's a bit of a complex slide. It's in the pack. Don't try and read it all. But the point I'm trying to make is you've got all these people, all of this stuff, and it's all connecting technologies together. It's all about trying to make better use of information across it and connecting lots of different technologies. And this is the world you're operating in. So to think about it just from a private 5G point of view doesn't really make sense. And I'll come on to talk a little bit about how to think through that. So just using the same framework again, what's happening here? Availability, efficiency, financial. I've just picked out some examples here of the benefits of the scheme. So, but essentially it's about providing enhanced experiences to the viewers. But on top of that, there are many other things going in here for other partners in the system. Got 5, okay. I'm going to super speed here. So you get the point, right? I'm just checking that I haven't sent you all to sleep. This is quite early. I don't know how much caffeine you've ingested, so you can see the point. Where can telcos play? I know we've got quite a lot of discussion about this. We think there's a sweet spot around these physical industries and national boundaries. But, there's plenty of discussion about that. I'm not going to dwell on that. But you can also see that there are other places where the internet players have potential advantages. Where? Well, unfortunately, there's a bit of a problem in that the most of the value in most of the stuff that you see in these future applications is in the solutions and applications. And I'm going to go super quick here, but broadly the picture is that telcos' capability is in here, in the sort of networky end of it, usually. And as you go up the value chain, is less so. So, and it's not exclusively true, and it doesn't mean you can't play higher in the value chain, but it means you have important choices to make because you're facing different competition in different places. So we think that if you're looking at network as a service as a type of place, then, well, a good ability to compete, although it is changing, and, AWS are talking about, I don't actually know if they are or they aren't, it's a rumor, so, discuss and debate, I think. APIs, very important thing. You see a lot of discussion about APIs. The whole point about APIs is it releases information out into the ecosystem. It allows other people to participate in the ecosystem. It allows you to participate in the ecosystem in a different way. So we're starting to see some really interesting stuff about that. Last but not least, if you want to be in the applications layer where all the value is, you have to commit. You have to show true delivery of value. And we see people like TELUS have done this in healthcare. Telstra are starting to do it in healthcare, and other people are doing it in certain industries. But you really have to commit, and you have to be in it a long term, and you have to really develop the expertise. I told you there's going to be a pot of cream. Here it is. That's the pot of cream. I found this beautiful picture of an old buttercup cream pot on the internet somewhere. Isn't that lovely? Anyway, what's the point of a cream pot? Why am I telling you about a cream pot? What I do is I try and think about these situations slightly differently and think about how do you put this in a holistic context? Because the problem we all have is we tend to focus on one thing, like, oh, it's a private 5G opportunity. Well, it might be, but it might be a public 5G, and it might be 4G, and it might be Wi-Fi, and it might not be at all, is the truth. And you have to think differently. That's the point. You have to not be so focused on the one thing that you do. You have to think through the whole bunch of things, and it's really difficult to do. So I was trying to think about, well, how would I think about doing it? So I came up with CREAM: customer, rules, ecosystem, assets, and model. And okay, I admit I fudged it into a CREAM acronym because I thought I wanted to give you something memorable to take away, because you're going to be blasted with information, but I thought you might remember this. You might remember connected technologies in CREAM. And if you do that, I'll be happy. Let me talk about these briefly. So customer. And I'm not going to say you have to start with the customer, because quite often I find in our work, and I'm sure in yours, you don't start with the customer. Someone says, what can we do with this bit of spectrum we've got? Oh, and everyone says, well, you've got to start with the customer first. Well, I'm going to try and show you how to perhaps to relate those two disparate facts. But at some point in your thinking, you need to have the expression of what does the customer want? And I've shown here enterprise customer factors that I picked out. You choose the factors, okay? But that's what I've used in this one. Rules. I think this is incredibly important, and the one that people miss more than anything else that I see is not the technology, they miss the rules. I've seen more things broken by not understanding what you are allowed to do and what the regulator will allow you to do or might allow you to do or might then stop you from doing. This is the things that breaks most things. Think about the rules: sovereignty, safety, security, competition and regulation. Really important. Get the lawyers on the side. Ecosystem. Again, I think this is tremendous, but you'll also see that I've sort of started with the external, and I'll come on to the internal. So, and this, I think, the ecosystem one's really important too, when I was talking about this idea of connected technologies, trying to think more holistically. Stakeholder needs and dynamics. if there's anything else that I would really point you to is that, who are your stakeholders and what do they want? Because it kind of points to the rules things and the customers things as well, but it also shows you a bunch of other things that you might need to take into account, like shareholders. You know, for example, you really need to think about that. Preferences and alternatives. I see so many things, so many bad business cases and bad use cases because people have not thought about the alternatives. They've not thought, well, actually, a wire to this thing is going to be better than trying to put a private 5G network into it. I mean, actually, I think one of the most interesting things, slight diversion for future discussions, is the whole business of video analytics. I think that's fundamentally changing a lot of industries. Because one thing you can do is you can stick a video camera on things and you can record all sorts of information about machines, about crowds, about stuff like that. And okay, there's a lot of bad stuff that you can imagine out of that as well. There's a lot of good stuff too, because all of this legacy machinery you couldn't previously connect, you can put a camera on it and you can tell an awful lot of what's happening. And that's what is driving a lot of stuff that's happening at the moment. Anyway, alternatives. Went off on one there. Sorry, everyone. Assets. And now you're starting to think about you. Only now start thinking about you. But I think this is important. Constraints. And I'll show you some examples of constraints that I mean here. Investment, resources, infrastructure. This is where you're starting to think about it. And you may in your processes be starting somewhere here. I'm just saying try and fill in the rest of the boxes. Ideally, you start at the left-hand end, but fill in the boxes. And last but not least, planned business model, offer pricing, etc., the operational model. This is the classic business model piece. That's the bit that you've got most control over. But there's only a point in making that when you understand all the other pieces of it. So, cream. Think cream. If you can use that as a thing to remember. I'm just going to give you a couple of examples and then I'm going to conclude. I've sort of thought of examples of how these things might express themselves to you. So, for example, an operational need from a customer. It takes too long to do in the cloud. It's too expensive. I want to do it locally. Sovereignty. We have to keep the data in this country or even on this site. It has to be anonymous. These are the kind of rules you're going to get. You can't fly drones here. I can tell you a story about someone who built a multi-million-pound business case using drone inspection that failed because the regulators said, well, you can't do that. You can't fly drones here. It's like, ooh. So that's why I'm saying make sure you start, get to the rules early, because that one thing out of the rules can mess the whole thing. That radio signal won't go through a boat. Yeah, it's true. It happens. You have to get your head around it. We don't know about automation, but we do know about automation, but not physical inventory at scale. So, thinking about what your operational skills are and where you may need partners. So, there we go. I was going to say, stop thinking telecoms, start thinking connected technologies, and remember cream. And that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. A lot of food for thought, a lot of good inputs, and you already mentioned the Metaverse, which is one of the new technologies. Some call it a hype. I do not know how many people were at the Mobile World Congress, but they did not believe that it was a hype because it was all over the place. But I'm very happy that we also have a speaker now addressing opportunities in the telecom sector. And I'll give the floor to Gabriel Moore, who is principal at Arthur D. Little. Gabriel.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning from my side as well. What a great start so far, and I think a very interesting introduction to this topic, connecting technologies, because that is also a very big topic and reason why a lot of the hype about Metaverse actually emerged and why people are so interested in this topic. Actually, today I want to discuss with you the impact of Metaverse on the telco business. And to start this discussion, I actually want to ask you a question. And my question would be, who feels bullish and who feels bearish about the Metaverse? If we can do a quick sign of hands for bullish. Positive. All right. Not too many yet, maybe a few asleep. That would mean the majority is on the bearish side, I would assume. Okay. This is, however, a trick question that I ask to you now, because it all depends on the time frame. I think if we talk about 25, the majority in this room is fully correct, and I would be on the bearish side as well. However, if I add 2030, 2035 to it, then I would expect the majority of you being on the bullish side. But I leave this discussion for you for some of the breaks. And another point that might change the answer to the question is what actually happened yesterday. I'm not sure who of you has seen the launch of Apple's new device, Vision Pro. Yesterday, I think local time, it was 8:20 in the evening. Tim was presenting the new device and what it will bring to the users and consumers, and the big differences to other competing devices like, for example, Oculus. And you can see, for example, from the picture here, a key change is that you see the eyes of the person who is actually having the glasses. And this makes a huge difference, because I don't know who has tried Oculus or similar glasses. Maybe we can do another hand of signs. I hope for more. All right, definitely more. Perfect. And at least for me, one of the disturbing things was always that you're completely shut off from what is going around you. And I don't want to make advertisement for it, but here, as soon as people are in your surrounding, you basically see what is going on, and you can have the contact with the person in front of you. And this is just one of the features that was presented yesterday. There's obviously, Apple is a design company, a lot of design elements that are featured here, the OLED display, and. And so the question that I was raising before potentially changes this, because if we look at Apple, they managed to reinvent or change the smartphone market, mobile phone market, if we think about iPods, iPads, everything. But they have also had not such success stories, like, for example, with Apple TV or HomePod, that they also tried. So future will tell what this will bring, but it's a clear sign, the direction that they are thinking of. And I think the important learning here and the takeaway is that this will bring new innovation to the topic of Metaverse, and forms a stronger collaboration around a larger ecosystem. But it's not only Apple that is relevant in this market, but there are a lot of other companies that are engaging and pushing certain strategies. And I really enjoy talking about this slide, because there are a lot of different strategies and perspectives around this topic and how you can move on. Because if I look, for example, at Meta, they put a lot of focus on the device, on Oculus. At a later point, they realized, okay, maybe the device isn't the only strategy, and we need to go stronger into the software direction. This is, for example, where then Microsoft came in, and they basically moved Teams and other collaboration tools in elements like Metaverse, and thereby enabled the development of this topic further. And then another important player is NVIDIA, because in particular, I would say the past half year, the topic around Metaverse has taken a little bit of a backseat compared to the topic of, for example, AI. But it doesn't mean that Metaverse is dead, or people are not interested in it. It's rather, and this is also what the slide is showing, that people are rethinking what to focus on it and what brings actual value and what they should do moving forward. And NVIDIA, I unfortunately haven't brought the stock price, but also if you relate to the different announcements that they have made a few weeks ago around AI, it's quite impressive. And in terms of metaverse, they are in particular focusing on the industrial metaverse. So all types of digital twins they are pushing. Like, for example, to make it more specific, BMW, before building a factory, they have actually built a digital twin, and digital twin is nothing new, but the collaboration with digital twins and the features that their solutions provide to actually run through the processes and basically optimize the factory in order to increase the well-being of the people, because certain steps in the value chain were involving more manual work than it would need be, and thereby they optimized it, and. So here, a lot of different perspectives on what actually metaverse means and how you can go about it. And I think this is one of the key messages that I want to give to you. Metaverse is not just Facebook who renamed itself or something that was pushed back by AI, but a lot of different topics, and everybody needs to find for himself where and how to play best. And also important one, metaverse is nothing new. The idea has been here for quite a lot of years. And coming from Austria, I always need to bring a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger with me to promote the country a little bit. But no, you can see here how long this idea has already been in the room and people exploring around it. This from a fictional point of view, but also in real life. You have the different events where, for example, Roblox was launched, where Second Life was launched, when Facebook acquired Oculus, that basically paved the way for the future development and where we're heading. And why actually has the buzz increased over the years, and why is it actually happening now? It's not because of the renaming of Facebook, but it's a combination of three different elements. You have on the one hand the software part, which basically means companies are more and more developing around platforms and standards and making sure that you have an ecosystem in where you can plug in and continue the development. You have the hardware, already talked about Apple, and then we have the users who are very eager to explore this. If I ask the question who has actually had on some virtual glasses, majority of you was raising the hands. So there is a curiosity about the topic, and all those three in combination will basically boost the topic around metaverse further. And metaverse, to a certain degree, is the future vision of the internet by combining four different pillars. You have the creator economy, meaning the leveraging of creator economy in the digital space by designing and selling various products. You have the collaboration platforms where you basically increase the facilitation of remote collaboration. You have the immersive spaces where you basically all work in a much more spatial environment together, and then obviously the social experiences. If we look back 2 or 3 years with COVID, everybody was basically thinking, okay, how can I engage with the others? What are the next steps? And obviously, this also contributed a lot to the topic of metaverse. And so from all those points, it's not a hype. We have heard a few reasons why it's not. If I look, for example, about the processors, about the platform, about the devices, about all the investments that the large companies are doing in this space and trying out and seeing where the future can head, but also from a telco perspective in the sense of thinking about connectivity. Is this a potential use case to monetize infrastructure further? And is it a possibility for me to venture up in the value chain? We heard before the various shares that a telco has when it comes to the infrastructure layer and when it comes to the application layer. And this obviously could be a stepping stone for some, and some are already exploring it in how it might look like. And I'm coming to a few examples in a minute. Important also is that this is not hype or only related to one segment, but it's actually across industries that companies are thinking about how to leverage it. I'm not sure, maybe some of you were coming by car to this event today, and a big topic is obviously in-car entertainment. And there are already discussions between telcos, media companies, and OEMs, how to basically create the next wave of in-car entertainment with, for example, subscriptions for glasses that can be used in the back seats and basically enjoy a complete new level of in-car entertainment. And it's not only the consumer space that we now talked a lot about, but also about the enterprise space and the industrial space. Now predominantly with gaming, this is obviously a big topic and fosters and plays into the revenue streams around Metaverse. But if we go forward, it's a lot about enterprises and industrial use cases. And if I just take the example of computers, how they were introduced and how they became popular, they were basically introduced as working devices pushed by companies, and only once people realized the benefit and the efficiency gains that they could have with computers, they actually wanted to have computers not only at work, but also at home. And a similar evolution might be possible in the metaverse. Now, there have been a lot of different topics that are already covered, and potentially one of you is thinking, okay, how this all relates to me, and why is this actually relevant from a telco perspective? And therefore, I brought this framework with me that depicts a little bit how we at Arthur D. Little think about the topic of metaverse. Because metaverse by itself is too large to holistically think about it. Important is that you delayer it, that you actually think for yourself, what is the layer that I'm good at, that I want to potentially venture in, that I want to boost further. And if I quickly run you through it, there's at the bottom, you have the infrastructure layer. Everybody of us can relate to this. You provide, for example, the connectivity. Then you have the world engine. And here, companies like, for example, Unity come into place. You have the graphic engines, you have the physical engines, you have the logic engines. This is one step further where you could say, okay, you move further from the direction of infrastructure into this place. Then you have the extended reality, and extended reality basically means how you build the worlds, how you put the different bricks on top of each other, and what the outcome might be. So how you use the different engines from the layer below, and then create the respective environment. An important question here is also how much is actually augmented and how much is actually fully virtual. In the device that was introduced yesterday by Apple, you actually have a digital crown that you can twist, and depending on this, you see more or less from your background. So this is also a key layer here. Then you have the human-machine interface, which basically means how can I input data into the metaverse and how can I extract it. So it might be the glasses, it might be a mouse, it might be speakers, various devices. And then you have the experience continuum, which is basically all the different use cases that you can put on top of this. And then you have the key enablers, which go into the area of security, around payments, and basically facilitate then and contribute to the remaining part on the other side. And for the experience continuum, I already mentioned it, the consumer part, the enterprise part, and the industrial part. I don't go into the details here, rather want to show the examples. The industrial one, digital twins, I already mentioned. If we take, just to show also the scope, that it's beyond telcos, and a lot of companies are engaging in here. Here, a grid operator running on a daily basis, basically simulations, and actually getting out of it, okay, what is the impact if I do an investment or if I don't? You have the employee training. Here one example, but it can also be referred to, for example, airplanes. If you get the new model before basically going in air, you need to train the entire staff. And here, in the past, you basically needed the physical space for it to basically make sure that every step the crew is taking is in line with the original. And now you can actually move into a virtual space, which is much easier, which is less costly, and much faster. You have the virtual meeting space. I think everybody of us can relate to what that means, given the past 3 years of Teams. And then you have the consumer use cases. I also want to give a different one to here, because I just had a discussion around it, coming from the brewery space. For example, Heineken is coming to its capacity constraints. They do not see themselves able to push all the people who are actually wanting to do a tour through the brewery in the facilities. And therefore they said, okay, interest is here, let's move it to the virtual space, and creating use cases around this and the whole experience. And then there are a few examples from the telco space that you can also relate to what is happening here. And this is one from MTN that is basically venturing into the metaverse by acquiring plots in Africa Rare, Ubuntu land, where a lot of the African culture is shown, and pictures can be acquired, and music can be discussed and exchanged. And there they basically built a MTN village with everything that belongs to it, with tokens and so on. Then you have SK Telecom, also very interesting company, who launched last year their platform IFLand almost on a global level. So they went from Korea and pushed it into all kinds of other countries. It's available in different languages, and it's B2B and B2C use cases that you can actually explore here. It's from exploring music, it's going to collaboration, it's going to actually the commercial exchange. And then another example is Docomo XR. They basically created a unit called Quonok, and this unit developed and built the XR world. They had in total close to $500 million of budget for this, and also 200 people working on it. So extremely large, and shows the dedication of certain companies that they are pushing. So you can see a lot of different advantages going into this space, from better customer experience to diversifying, boosting revenue streams, monetizing infrastructure in different areas, making sure that compared to other developments, to rather stay on the forefront and not being let out. And with that said, I arrived at my last slide, which basically shows that there are, if you are interested in this topic, and if you are pursuing this, there are a few questions that you in particular need to think about. meaning where do I want to play? Remember the framework that I showed to you? Not everything needs to be on your agenda, but really specifically target certain areas that you say you want to venture into and potentially helps your customers. Then obviously plan to monetize the metaverse opportunity, see how the services that you're offering can be leveraged, whether it's going into the engines direction or the use case direction. Then what investments need to happen in order to prioritize and guarantee success. Then it's also a question of an ecosystem. Who do you partner with? Who do you bring into the boat? Also yesterday, for example, Apple announced another collaboration with Disney that is bringing a lot of the content forward and obviously helps in the development. So also an essential question for you. Then how can you mitigate potential risks? Meaning with the original time horizon that I added to the question in the beginning, when do I actually start this? Is it too early now? How can I mitigate elements like this? And then it is about how can you leverage for your existing course, or how can I bring it closer to this? And with that said, I want to thank you for your attention and hand back over to Wim. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Gabriel. We will discuss already opportunities for the digital sales channels in the working group focusing on it, and we will also have some discussions on opportunities in the industries of the metaverse for telcos. But now I think we're running a bit over time, so we'll try to stay according to the agenda for the coffee break. But so now it's time to look at sustainability, one of the pillars also of this conference, and I'm very happy to introduce Catherine Bals, who is responsible for the sustainability department at Proximus, and she will explain why sustainability is a matter for all.
Thank you, Wim. Good morning, and after all those technological presentations that we have until now, I'm going to try and explain a bit why sustainability is also a matter for everybody here in the room, and not only for the people looking into sustainability. We've talked a lot about sustainability, and there's a lot of messages about climate change out there. The net zero, a lot of people are saying net zero, we're going to be net zero by then, we're going to be net zero by 2040, 2050. A lot of it is out there, but the challenge is really gigantic still. To date, emissions are still going up. We're still not acting like we should. And it will require us to think completely differently, like we've talked about the metaverse, or like we've talked about thinking how we can build our future differently. And this will be required also for the climate challenge. Bit of background, a lot is about energy. If we look at energy, it's really one of the big drivers of GHG emissions. And then one thing that people tend to forget is that if we look at the ICT sector, and if we look particularly towards telcos, we are emitting close to what aviation sector is emitting. So it is a real challenge for us to really be the actors for that change. Now, and I know this is a slide which probably a lot of you already saw, or maybe not, but I think to really be able to understand why it is also a matter for all, we need to go through to what is footprint of a company or an organization or a country, and it is all about those three called scopes. There is what you emit yourself, the direct own emissions, both direct and indirect. Think about the fuel you use, think about the electricity you use. And then there's also what is the so-called indirect scope up and downstream in your value chain. So the goods that you buy, the transport that is needed for it, that is in that so-called scope 3. Now, if we look at telcos' footprints, they are driven mainly by that scope 3. So it's mainly in the value chain that the biggest problem is. for a lot of the telcos, there is still a large part in that scope 3, which is scope 2, which is electricity, but that is highly dependent on how you source your electricity or how you produce your electricity. And then if we look at where, in which type of products does it sit, it's really about the devices, the network, that's where that big chunk of the scope 3 is sitting in, while in the data centers there's also a lot around that scope 2, which is more the electricity usage. Now, how can we act, one could ask? Well, of course, energy, that's the logical one. If you see where the current footprint is, energy is an easy one. You can avoid using fossil fuel by electrifying, but then that electrification still needs to happen in a green way. So you need to source or produce your electricity from renewable sources and not just from the grey energy like we call it. But we can also act on the consumption of the electricity. The more we drive up the data usage, the more we are using electricity. So really keeping and taking action to keep that electricity under control is a way of doing so. But will that get us there? And for that, I just used the zoom of our own footprint, so the Proximus footprint. And if you look at the Proximus footprint, we've been acting upon climate for already quite some time, and that is visible because 94% is in that scope 3, so in the value chain. There's only very little in scope 1 and 2 anymore. And the biggest chunk, if we then look into the value chain, where is it? It's in what we buy. It's in the procurement of the goods and services, and it's in the usage of the electricity of the goods and services that we have bought. And when we then look at what we procure, what is the biggest driver in that procurement side? Well, we're rolling out a fiber network. So of course, the fixed network is a huge chunk of it. But there's also a big part linked to IT. And again, I'm repeating myself. It's in the devices again. So as we can say, there's a lot of people here related to the network also in the room. So you can really take a stance on it. Now, how can we do that? I'd like to think that we can be advocates in driving that change and by thinking circular. Those are, for me, two main drivers in tackling that value chain. And I'm going to go a bit deeper into the advocacy role. Advocacy towards our suppliers. We buy things. So the way we deal with our suppliers, what we ask our suppliers, and what they need to do to act is a way we can be advocates towards them. How can you do that? Of course, well, we've got over 4,000 suppliers. I'm not going to address my over 4,000 suppliers, but we're going to do that in a targeted way. So again, we've segmented them and we prioritize them according to which are the ones that produce the highest emissions and which are the ones where we have some buying power with. And we are starting to talk to them and we are bringing the awareness that they need to take action. And so we're going to actually push them towards transforming themselves. And also providing us accurate data, because we all rely a bit on fluffy data there still. Now, on the other side, we're all telcos. We also can towards those where we don't have buying power, or when we all buy the same things. We all buy a network, we all buy the devices that we put in the homes, we all buy smartphones. We can jointly also be an advocate by using our industry associations and trying to push the suppliers there to take action. That's one thing, advocacy towards our suppliers. Now, I also think we need to nudge the consumer, because they are the ones buying the products, and we are pushing them what they need to buy. But on the other hand, they don't know what their impact is on the climate. So we also need to nudge the consumers through all communication channels and touch points that we have to drive them towards behavioral change. Let them buy a repaired smartphone. Let them understand why they should use less data. We need to try to also nudge our consumers. And then there is think circular. The circular part is really where we can also drive. Circularity all comes with start with rethinking the way we want to create something. Do we need it? Can we put requirements forward in a different way, use recycled plastic, make it easier to repair? This is one of the first things. Then comes with what can we do to extend that life cycle of a product? Should we put out another different business model? Should we not just sell smartphones, but put them as a service in a sort of leased model on the market? Or can we get those phones back to get them repaired and refurbished and give them a different life? And it's not only about the smartphones or the devices, but it's also about the network. We are sharing our network. The mobile network is being rolled out together with Orange. That's also a way where we reduce the number of base stations and where we have less electricity usage. It's a way of thinking circular. And then, of course, at the end, so I told we were rolling out the fiber network. Well, we need to get that copper out of the ground too, so that we can recuperate it and have lesser impact. So that is a way that you can think circular in order to source less. And when you still need to source something, that you source it in the right way, so that you extend the life cycle, that you use less materials that are in it, and that you see how you can get them back at the end of the life cycle. Now, those are I would say, the easy ones. Thinking circular, being advocates. But what about being a bit bold? Our new strategy is called Bold 2025, so I thought I'm going to just have a bit of a bold thought. We are pushing people towards consuming more data. That consumption of more data is each time bringing in new technologies. Each new technology is, again, buying things, rolling out things. We are really driving also that consumption pattern. At the same time, towards the customers, we are pushing unlimited data. Well, shouldn't we start by, in the circularity world, rethink? Do we need to go to 6G? Can we do it differently? Do we need to push everybody towards unlimited? Do we need to consume that much data? Shouldn't we push maybe people more on the Wi-Fi instead of just having mobile data, because we know the Wi-Fi has a lesser impact from an electricity usage? Those are things that I'd like to also bring in your mind, that it is also about being bold, daring to change and daring to think differently. And to end, to really say that in order to create that change and achieve net zero, it's not about us as sustainability professionals, but it's about everybody. It's about you. You need to start to think different, think circular. You need to be an advocate also towards the people around you, because you can have an impact. It's about the telco, who can really act on several levels, whether it is on the devices, whether it's in your buildings, whether it is in your operations. And we also need to think ecosystems. How are we behaving towards our consumers? How are we behaving towards our partners? And how are we behaving towards our suppliers? So it's really, for me, a matter for all. And with that, I think I managed to gain a bit of time, no?
Thanks a lot, Catherine. Very engaging thoughts, and a lot of things will be discussed the next 2 days. So I'm very happy now that we have physically also Roman this time. He was virtually in the Rome gathering, but he will connect into what Catherine has already introduced, now related to telcos. What are the opportunities and the challenges, not only for sustainability, but also for energy reduction?
Thank you, Wim. Can you hear me? Yes, you can. Well, Wim, you gave me quite a challenge, I have to say. Who in this room needs another keynote speech now? I could imagine there was so much content now in the first hour, in the first 1.5 hours. It's hard to listen. And on top, you have invited a consultant for the last keynote speech. You know what a consultant likes to do? Add a lot of content onto the slides, find it tiny fonts. They are hardly readable in the back of the room. So I thought about it. What do I do? And on top of them, yes, sorry, I've forgotten the last challenge. You told me initially it was 20 minutes, so I've prepared something like 40 pages, and then you shortened it to 15 minutes. So what can I do now? I decided to add another page to my presentation. Kind of, exactly. Because the page I added is a summary page, and the summary page lays out what I'm going to tell you today. and you will see a lot of exciting things, and that make you so excited you will listen till the end. And on top, I have to say, Catherine was really preparing my presentation quite nicely. So we even have double charts partially, which tells us how well we are coordinated, but I'll go faster over these charts and then give you really the very interesting pieces of information. And it works, yes. And if I start with the management summary, you can already see that there is a bit of a different messaging in my presentation, and hopefully that keeps you excited. Because at the very bottom of the page, you're going to see, when we talk about sustainability in the telecom industry, it's a lot about compliance. It's a lot about really managing our footprint, changing our business model, becoming circular. But the perspective is that we can generate business out of it, and there's a huge business potential. And that's what you're going to see at the end of the presentation, so please pay attention. But the summary is, sustainability has really reached the telecom industry. There's hardly any telecom operator and device manufacturer or network equipment manufacturer who has not sustainability targets. Very interesting targets, however, you're going to see. Most of them are promises about net zero, ambition promises. No one knows how to get there, and Catherine somehow alluded to that. Biggest accomplishments have been made by energy consumption. I show you nice figures, unfortunately not the latest ones because they're not yet available, but you'll see that the industry is moving to more and more energy efficient networks, data centers. Quite remarkable, I have to say, in particular in Europe. So Catherine also mentioned circularity. That is really something, well, I leave the rest for the charts. One word about circularity and waste management. I hate waste management, but in telecoms we talk about waste management because we produce a lot of e-waste. That is really something that is still very new, actually, to our industry. There is hardly an operator that has fully embraced circularity. A bit more in the device space, much less in the network space. There is a lot of homework to do for us, and that's what I'm also going to cover. But last but not least, that's really the most important message. Once we as an industry have accomplished to be more sustainable, once we have decarbonized our operations, well, not sure whether we can do that, but have selected decarbonized suppliers, then the business potential that comes out of it in the consumer space, but much more important in the B2B space, is huge, is really huge. And that's the number you're going to see at the end. So hopefully that keeps you awake until we have the coffee break. So let me start with a couple of information. First of all, there's an industry agnostic chart that you're going to see here. So this tells us it's actually foolish not to embrace sustainability in any industry, in particular also in the telecom industry. Why? Because there are multiple benefits. The benefits are, when it comes to retention of your employees, it's about creating higher profitability because you can reduce costs, you can generate more revenue, you have lower costs of capital, you have a more benign regulator, all stakeholders love you, and ultimately you can generate more revenue. There are many data points to prove that. In the telecom industry, a bit less, because we are not so in the middle of the sustainability discussion, but the cheaper cost of capital can be proven. Look at more sustainable companies, fiber companies. They have, because of less energy consumption, lower cost of capital. Many benefits. So I can really prove to anyone, even to your CFO, not sure whether we have CFOs in the room, it pays off to become more sustainable. Let me go into the details how it looks like. So first of all, most telecom operators have committed to net zero targets. And remember, net zero targets means not carbon neutral, right? No emissions out of your operations and the supply chain, according to the SBTi regime. And Catherine is coming back. Proximus is one of those, as you can see here. You have your committed target. Many other operators that you see in the box at the bottom have just committed. That means they are still working on it, how it can look like. There are other very ambitious ones, and that's the reason why I've highlighted TTC Net by 2030. 2030 net zero. But remember what Catherine told us. Net zero means scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Scope 1, scope 2, we have kind of intellectually under control because it's our own operations. Scope 3 is quite a challenge, and I'll show you how we could get there, but it's really by no means trivial. And still we have very bold operators who make that promise. Quite remarkable, I have to say. And that's really something which concerns me as a consultant, because when you make that promise, you tell the outside world, I'm going to make the target. If you fail, probably not good. Might have consequences for the share price, might have consequences for loyalty or whatever. But let's see how we can get there. First of all, I will show you something that looks very busy. I keep it short. The message here is very simple. What I have done over the last 4 years, I have analyzed telecom operators and their sustainability performance, not ambition. What I showed you before was ambition, that is performance. And I looked how transparent do they report about sustainability, carbon emissions. I looked at how efficient are they with their energy consumption, how much emissions do they produce, etc., etc. And I categorized that according to the geography where the operators are located, the headquarters located, simply because there's a huge difference between Asia, America, and Europe. Europe is leading, obviously, in the sustainability space. And what you see by the changes, this is the delta between 2 years, operators are focusing a lot on more transparency. They create fantastic reports because they know my stakeholders are looking at sustainability. That's the transparency bar here. They also improve a bit, less than transparency on CO2 emissions and energy intensity. I show you more data on that. The rest is probably not improving so well, and that's the circularity remark I made at the beginning. You see, circularity is really not improving a lot. Actually, in some regions, going down. So that's an outcome of my index calculation. There will be an update in summer, which I will publish very soon, hopefully, and I will be very curious to see how the trend was going. Now, here is energy usage. Again, a bit of a tricky chart, same categorization, different headquarters, different telcos. But what you can see here at the bottom, at the top of the page is, first of all, total energy consumption in Europe is going down, which means we're using more energy efficient networks and data centers. Good thing. But even more so, look at the last bar in that row. That's energy per traffic. And you all know we are transporting more traffic, tremendously more traffic. Energy per traffic is going down. So we really have a different way to transport traffic data. That's a good thing. You might have read yesterday, ETIS announced they have reduced by changing the equipment gear, the radio equipment gear, they have accomplished to reduce energy consumption by 52%, just by taking out old equipment. And that's exactly the recipe. By taking out old legacy equipment, for example, in fixed networks, copper, you can accomplish exactly that kind of efficiency increase. Unfortunately, it's not in every geography like that. Look at Asia. And now, look at the emissions. That was energy consumption. Emission is basically the result of that. That's down there. And you can see, unfortunately, however, I have to say, that we still rely in the telecom industry globally a lot on non-renewable energies. That has to do with the supply. In Asia, North America, there's less supply. In Europe, we have many telecom operators who run the networks completely on renewable energies. On the left-hand side, it's even increasing. And that's, of course, the best path towards the Scope 1, Scope 2 net neutral, net zero journey. But only Scope 1, Scope 2. So far, we should applaud ourselves, or you. I'm just a consultant helping you to get there, but you did it. That's a good accomplishment in Europe. That chart I don't need to explain, thanks to Catherine. I just want to highlight once again what you also said. On the right-hand side, we do have the scope distribution. And Proximus has already 90% Scope 3. That is due to the fact that you have worked on your Scope 1, Scope 2 a lot, obviously. But on average, when you look globally, you still have 2/3, three quarters in Scope 3, and 1/4, 1/3 in Scope 1, Scope 2. But now, let's come back to my initial chart. I said most telecom operators have committed to net zero. Net zero means Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3. It's the entire supply chain. So there's no way out than also tackling the supply chain, Scope 3. And that's a bit out of our control, right? Who tells Huawei, Ericsson, not sure we have representatives in the room here, but who tells Ericsson, Huawei, and Mavenir or Samsung how to produce, to get the carbon out of their devices, the network gear that we buy from them? Quite tricky. But I'll show you in the next chart how they can work. So here's a bit of a more detailed breakdown, but again, Catherine explained it. On the right-hand side, or on the left-hand side already, you see a bit the typical distribution, right? Scope 1, Scope 2, your own energy consumption, either electricity or fuel. And then you have Scope 3, and when you cut it down, Scope 3, you have what we call upstream, that's what we buy, and we have downstream, what is used. And user sold products is category 11 in scope 3, according to the typical nomenclature, and then we have purchased goods and services, and that's what's our direct responsibility, because the usage is also partially only influenceable. But now let's look one step deeper into purchased goods and services. And now I show you a very interesting chart, and I hope that's worthwhile my speed, my presentation to you. When you today buy any kind of equipment, what do? You ask for the price, and you at best ask for price and total cost of ownership, so lifetime value, so to say, and you look at the performance, right? That's what you do. And what I tell you should do is, you should also look at the carbon footprint that comes with these devices. Why? Because when you control it, you open up a business opportunity for you. That is the end of my presentation, as I said. But let me explain that chart. What we did here is just one example. I can do that for many other things. I've done it for many other things. It's an antenna, right? Yeah, I picked the antenna here. We decomposed it on the left-hand side. You can decompose it into raw material and the weight, but you can also decompose it according to CO2 footprint. So when you buy aluminum, when you buy steel, when you buy copper, you can get, you don't always get it, but you can get from suppliers the information of how much carbon comes with it. That's the split on the right-hand side. So you see, again, that's a bit different than the weight. Now, if you would take the time or the energy and the effort to engage in a dialogue with the supplier, you can tell him what's shown on the right-hand side, namely how to replace primary aluminum with secondary aluminum, how to replace aluminum carrier plates with galvanized iron plates. And what happens is, what you see on the right-hand side, in the right column, on the first column, it reduces carbon, the carbon footprint of that specific material you use from the antenna. And the funny thing is, as you can see on the right, in the right column, it comes even with lower costs. Have you thought about it? Reducing carbon means you get an equipment at lower costs. Unfortunately, it's not completely true. When you go to the bottom of that list, you see replacing plastic that comes with additional costs. Replace conventional plastic with bio-based plastics. And that all of that is shown in the upper curve. We call it the marginal abatement cost curve. But the interesting thing is, with the first levers, you can reduce the footprint of the antenna, and we can reduce the cost of antenna. And if you decide to go to the last step, then you might have an increase. But the very good message of the chart is, we have now recyclates available that would even reduce the cost of first conventional plastic. So by decomposing that antenna and by creating such a marginal abatement cost curve, we gain two things. We understand how we can fund the journey towards a more sustainable equipment, and we can even save costs and carbon. It's not an exception. I can show you a similar chart for routers, for other kind of equipment, for devices, all of that exists. But we don't do it in the industry, or we do it point to point. And we can't do it always because we don't have the scale. But with the help of ETIS, with the help of other, with the GSMA, we might be able to do it, and we should do it. So that's my really first, most important message. Being more sustainable doesn't come necessarily with higher costs. It allows you to reduce costs. The marginal abatement cost curve is a very important tool. That's exactly what is done here. When we do it across your value chain, when we do it across the telecom operations, I have to admit there are elements that are cost-saving, left-hand side, and there are elements that are increasing costs, right-hand side. But the integral doesn't look so negative. So again, it can pay off when you do it well. And interesting enough, just a side remark, that curve for a US telco operator has changed dramatically to the positive after the IRA. Regulation has a significant impact on the trajectory of such a curve, of a marginal abatement cost curve. So it's strongly dependent on legislation and regulation in your specific country. But what I encourage you to do is embark on that kind of analysis for your most important equipment and ideally for most parts of your value chain. So I want to shift gears. I have just spent 5 minutes, right, in my presentation. I have 10 more, I hope. I'll keep it short. Now I want to say, okay, once we have accomplished a certain degree of sustainability performance in our value chain, let's make a virtue out of it and try to sell our strong sustainability performance by telling our customers, when buying Proximus or any other high-performing sustainable telecom company, you have a better footprint in your own Scope 3, and you can better accomplish your own targets. And when you look at those numbers here, and I go now into details, more and more large enterprises, they buy with a strong filter, do I buy sustainable products? Do I buy sustainable services? We have a lot of statistics at BCG. I'm pretty sure when I asked you, the B2B people here, salespeople in the room, you can hardly run a large pitch without any kind of sustainability discussion. So you have to build it, and you can build it into your sales story, but only when you have a strong performance. Otherwise, it's called greenwashing. So that's a fast forward now to the quantification. If I add all this up in the B2B space, I can, and probably I was a bit too fast, when I also think about the fact that I can sell not only green connectivity with a green network, but also green digital decarbonizing services, like IoT that helps you to do remote maintenance or smart building applications. When you look at the value of these kind of services, first the impact in emission reduction, then the cost savings you can help your customers to achieve, and then as a result also the value of the revenue you can generate with that. The value of that entire digital sustainable service market is something like $2 trillion in the year 2030. And I believe that's on the low end. It's the impact you as an industry, as an ICT telco industry, can generate and create value. As a matter of fact, the Paris Climate Deal in 2015 stated already that we can only achieve our targets if the ICT industry, the telco industry, really contributes by really delivering green networks, green data centers that then enable decarbonizing the operations of other industrial sectors. It's not only a task, it's a business opportunity. It's a $2 trillion business opportunity in the year 2030. Not all goes to telco operators, only to those that have digital services, but a lot goes to us. So that should be a teaser. There are, however, many facets and details to it. You can hardly read it in the back of the room. It says it's just not as simple to say, well, we have a green network and green data centers. You need to be specific to certain verticals. You need to understand exactly what kind of needs they do have. You see here different use cases, or cluster use cases, I rather call them, like digital supply chain, like green offices and buildings, waste reduction, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of details, and there are many telcos already embracing that. It makes life more complex, of course, because it's an additional feature, so to say, of your products, and you need to really understand them quite well. But most importantly, you need to be able to really quantify it and really spell out what the value is. And that requires a lot of effort. And Catherine, you alluded to that. We have limited data. But the point I want to make is there is a huge, huge demand out there. And that was the survey we did as BCG 2021. There's no doubt about the demand. There's no doubt about the fact that customers are willing to pay for it because simply they have made their own promises they have to meet. They need to really buy greener products that help to decarbonize. And these are the details to it. That's B2B. A quick word about B2C. A completely different story because there's not additional value. However, there are preferences in the consumer space. Also, consumers prefer more green products. I wouldn't say they're willing to spend more money on it. That's a different story. But if you really have green products, they prefer a green product, many consumer segments over non-green products. What I did here last year, I did run a survey in Germany, I'm German, and asked them, what kind of claim, what kind of branding, what kind of positioning do you prefer? And the dark green claims are all green claims. The other ones are about technology and about costs. And you see, the green claim prevails. There are many consumers, in Germany it might be a bit special, but across Northern Europe we can clearly see it. There are many consumers who really prefer green propositions. So my recommendation to you as the telecom industry is think about, and we started from Proximus, think about really the composition of green consumer propositions. Many details how to do it. That chart was something we did for one operator. Basically the message is you need to combine green network messages, a green tariff, which is a bit abstract, I admit, but when you run a network on renewable energy, you can easily claim you have a green product, a green tariff, and combine it with circular devices, circular device elements, no plastic usage. That's hidden in that busy chart here. And there are many, many interesting examples. Swisscom has done a fantastic job. Deutsche Telekom also has a nice bundled offer, Vodafone as well. So, and it resonates. You attract customers that are not primarily looking at technology features. Is there a difference between 10 megabit and 20 megabit? For some consumers, there's no difference anymore. And that can be done. So, now I summarize. And come to the end. That's the last chart, promised. My point is, once the telecom industry has accomplished to become greener, and there's a huge need to do that. We saw the numbers from Catherine. The telecom industry is creating more, the ICT industry, I should be more precise, is creating more emissions than the airline industry. By the way, by far by now, because our world is digitizing more and more and more day by day. So we are creating more emissions. We need to get our footprint under control, our emission footprint and our waste footprint. But once we have done it as an industry, we are an extremely credible player to help others to become greener, more sustainable, in particular the B2B segment. That is a business opportunity. We need business opportunities in telco, don't we? Growth is not really something that comes easy. This is an enormous growth potential. How to do it? First of all, look into your current portfolio. Most telecom operators do have already products in their portfolio that help to decarbonize. We don't talk about it. Take a digital workplace solution. It replaces physical commute with a digital service. It's a decarbonizing service. When the foundation, your network, is green, you should promote a digital workplace solution as a green solution. And it will work. Your customers will buy it because it helps to decarbonize and it's green. That's the first part. Then think about explicit green product development, smart building solutions, etc. And last but not least, you saw the long list for the different verticals. Think about green tech ventures. That will give you a lot of growth in the future. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Roman. I think we still have 2 days to go deeper into all the ideas which were expressed already. So we have limited time in the common session to go into details for every topic. But we still have 2 topics left, AI and edge computing we want to touch upon. So I'm very happy to have Branimir and Anna, Branimir from Rvatsky Telecom and Anna from Inform. We're also very happy to have 3 sponsors during the gathering. We have a sponsor, Comarch, as a golden sponsor. We have silver sponsor, Inform, and we will have a speech at the end of Lenovo and Intel, who are diamond sponsor. But first, let's give the floor to Branimir, and we'll try to be finishing around 11-ish. I think we will not have time for the round table. Thank you.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes, or?
No, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Wim. And thank you all for having us here. So today, Anna and I will present how cutting-edge technologies are revolutionizing customer experience. Anna is from Inform company. I'm from Croatian Telecom, responsible for customer experience management. So let's start this journey together then. So first of all, we are living in fast-paced digital era where customers have their expectations really high and they skyrocketed. And if we want to take advantage of these expectations and to serve the purpose for the telcos, we need to look closer at what are their expectations. And their expectations are seamless connectivity everywhere. They want personalized experiences and interactions across all the channels. They want effortless customer journeys to get their jobs done. So this is the expectations of the customer today. And to meet and exceed these expectations, we believe that we need to embrace digital technologies and new transformative technologies and to find a way how to leverage its full potential. And we as a telco, we have a role to play. So we have to be in a leading seat and to reshape the whole customer experience platforms, and ecosystems. And for this reason, let's start talking about what are the challenges, common challenges that we are all having. So starting with the current challenges, I hope we all have more or less the same. You can raise your hand if you share some of them or all of them. I believe that, or no challenges, so we can skip the slide. So starting with the customer expectations, ever-evolving customer expectations with a radical shift from the physical to digital experiences, gaining more pressure on the telcos. Also, complexity of the customer journeys. Customers are saying that our journeys are fragmented, robust, and very costly for the customers, but also for the telcos. Third thing, information overload, and third challenge. So information overload meaning bombarding the customers with different platforms and messages from care, sales, offerings, different marketing campaigns, etc. So what we can do and how to stand out as a telco to be recognized as a partner that brings valuable messages to the customers. And the fourth, technology roadblocks and insufficient prioritization, meaning working on old and legacy platforms, not delivering right customization and prioritization opportunities for the better experiences. With all of these challenges, we also have to look, on the other hand, opportunities that technology is bringing to the telecommunication, supported with the trends that we are having, starting with the staggering growth of telecommunication technology. Number of connected devices has multiplied exponentially. Also, digital penetration, digital literacy increased very well, and supporting all technologies that we are bringing as a telco. So, for instance, starting with eSIM, so switching from fully physical to fully digital experience, making customers' life easier, but also our life easier. Also thinking about 5G networks, high speeds, low latency, near real-time communication, enabling everything that we heard today. Gabriel mentioned announcement from the Apple, for example, for the Vision Pro glasses. So where we see then application of AR and VR, but also to look into disruptive trends that we are having, such as AI and especially generative AI, how we can use it and utilize it as a telcos for different use cases. For example, we can start by gathering informations, gathering clear insights in a second by processing large amount of the data, but also using the chatbots to utilize transactions and touch points and interactions with our customers. So in one hand we have challenges, in the other hand we have opportunities. And so what is then differentiating and creating a winning telco, and what we need to become winning telco is three things. First thing is to embrace cutting-edge technologies. Second thing is to find a way to get rid of the challenges that we are having. And the third thing is to leverage the rich data that we are all sharing and having. So how to leverage the data? We have three things to do. The first thing is to gather the insights, so valuable insights for the organization, and pass it to the segments. Segments should improve the experiences, should create omnichannel experience, and create better structural improvements across all journeys, leading us to in real-time personal engagement in digital environment, which is really important, as leveraging the data is bringing us closer to the customer, their needs, their wants, and their behaviors. And key ingredients for success, starting with people, starting with us. So we are taking the role, we are in the leading position, and we as a telcos, we need to create this change. So having diverse skills, having technical expertise, and gaining valuable insights, and deep customer focus, and understand these behaviors, these needs and wants that are ever evolving, and that we need to adapt to our practices and to our customer journeys. To tailor-made everything that we do toward the customers, but also with the technology playing the crucial role. So it's not anymore an option for the telcos to apply and to embrace these technologies, but it's really necessity. And for all telcos, it's a unique opportunity at the same time to use these technologies and to create better future for the customers with a seamless experience, with the personalized journeys, and with the concrete unsatisfied unparalleled satisfaction. Sorry. I'm now passing the mic to Anna. She will explain how to do it. Yeah.
Thank you, Branimir. So good morning, everyone. So I'll pick on the last point that Branimir was mentioning, technology, to discuss how are artificial intelligence and machine learning transforming the customer experience. So artificial intelligence and machine learning enable businesses to dig into vast amounts of data to extract insights. Those insights can then be used in the customer engagement to create those wow moments that we are all looking forward in customer experience. So how can we do that? Here we have some examples. The first one is contextual personalization. So personalization is all about tailored recommendations and customized interactions. AT&T in the US, for instance, they have developed their own mobile app that, among other things, allows for personalized offers on voice and data packages based on the contextual use of the customer. So this is one example that I would like to give you. Another example is really through the use of chatbots. So these AI-powered virtual assistants are basically making use of natural language processing to engage in a human-like conversation with customers, extending support to 24/7. So this is quite a significant change in customer support. Predictive analytics is another example. So predictive analytics is all about anticipating behaviors. So by mapping a sequence of events in the customer journey, you can really anticipate customer service degradation, network congestion, and take preventative measures. Another example of predictive analytics would be fraud prediction. So by detecting abnormal usage patterns, you can predict fraud and therefore enable a much more secure and trustworthy environment for the customer, and this will have a direct impact on the customer experience. Process automation is another example. So automated customer service provisioning is already reduces significantly the manual intervention and streamlines processes. And sentiment analysis. So sentiment analysis is all about looking into text and try to extract a sentiment, either positive, negative, or neutral. So this means that everything that the customers write on social media, on customer services, on customer surveys, can then be used with artificial intelligence and ML algorithms to extract what is the customer perception, what are the customer concerns, where should we actually act first. So by leveraging these technologies, telecom companies can deliver more tailored, efficient, and satisfying experiences to their customers. But there are also some challenges that need to be taken into consideration. And data privacy and preparation is one of them, obviously. So if the quality of the input will determine the quality of the output. The ethical use of data is also quite important. So we need to be transparent with customers on for what purpose we are using their data. We need to get their consent for their data usage. We need to comply with all the data privacy regulations. But also, when using machine learning, we also need to make sure that the machine learning model does not contain any bias that will determine any discriminative output. Another important topic that we like to mention is to balance machine learning with expert knowledge. So this is the hybrid AI approach that, for instance, we at Inform have been advocating for a long time. And this is all about complementing machine learning with other techniques, such as fuzzy logic, for instance, to give a more nuanced, more human-like reasoning approach to machine learning, to improve the interpretability of the models and to create a more robust decision-making framework. And last but not least, continuous evaluation. So we need to continuously evaluate the models to avoid any model degradation and to avoid any possible customer preferences changes that may go unspotted. So we have seen how artificial intelligence and machine learning are transforming customer experience. What are the challenges? But what are now the key steps to design a winning customer experience strategy? Of course, this will start with the definition of the customer experience goals with your management from top to bottom. But going into more concrete areas, I would say that the first step would be to collect data from all the multiple touch points that the customer uses to interact with a company, being websites, mobile apps, social media, customer services, all the usage data, all the profile data, in order to build a 360 real-time, and this is important, real-time view of the customer. That data can then be used to analyze and predict, depending on the objectives that you have defined. You can set up different use cases to predict churn, to do sentiment analysis, to many other things. Then to act. And by act, we mean giving back the insight into your customer experience systems and applications. And that intelligence can then be used to better segment your customers and have more tailored, personalized offers. It can be used by customer support to anticipate customer needs and be more proactive. It can be used by product management and product development to identify where are the gaps in the current offer and how you can create more innovative offers. So basically, it can create all the wow moments that I was mentioning in the beginning. So how do we envision the future? So most of these trends that we have here have also been approached in the previous presentations. But for sure, it's quite visible today that this is where we are going. So these are the key trends that are shaping customer experience in the future. And the first one is definitely 5G, with enhanced connectivity, with faster data speeds, with lower latency. So this enables real-time customer interactions and the Internet of Things to flourish. And speaking of IoT, so the IoT device will gather a huge amount of data regarding customer preferences, customer habits. And for instance, for smart homes, this allows to automate and predict a number of actions. So hopefully, when I wake up in the morning, my coffee machine can already be turned on. Hopefully, in the future, my kids will be ready too, and dinner will be ready when I arrive home. So this just as a wishful thinking. Another key trend is the investment that telecom operators are doing in their self-service channels. So more and more the idea is to empower the customer, to give them the power to manage their accounts, to solve possible issues by himself without any effort. So, and this is also shaping the market. Augmented reality and virtual reality. This was also mentioned in previous presentations. So augmented reality applications enable for immersive experience. So customers can visit virtual showrooms. They can have real-time information, really interactive engagements with telco operators. So this will change significantly the customer experience. Blockchain. So again, the security topic. So blockchain enables secure and fast, secure and transparent transactions. So this will have an impact on billing, on mobile payments, on identity verification. So, and last but not least, hyper-personalization. So I have been talking here about gathering insights, and all those insights shall be used for tailoring more and more and personalizing more and more the customer experience and the customer engagement. So in short, it will be these three areas, three keywords that we would like to give you: connectivity, personalization, and empowerment. And as a last slide, sorry, we have just these three key messages that we would like to leave with you on how you can stay ahead of this game. So foster a culture of innovation. Don't be afraid to test new ideas. So ensure cross-functional collaboration in your companies. Keep track of market trends. That's what we are doing here at ETIS, and that's what we are continuing to do in these 2 days. Also learn from other industries. And finally, promote customer centricity in your organization. So, and this is something that needs to come from the top to show that the customer is at the center of every decision that is taken in the company, and all the areas in the company, they need to be educated to be aware of the benefits of this change of culture and approach. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anna and Branimir. We're 10 to 15 minutes away from coffee, so please bear with us. We have the last speaker now, and last but not least, we have the Diamond sponsor speaking, who also became a new supporting party of ETIS, Lenovo and Intel, and Dominique van Hamme will present the opportunities for telcos in edge computing.
Thank you, Wim. Thank you, Wim. And good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Still okay? One more keynote. So let's not call it a keynote, right? Let's talk it. It's an introduction. Let's put it this way. More like a fireside than anything else. So I think you've got enough material already. So I want to give you a bit of a view on who we are. I will certainly talk about Edge and how we can turn Edge into profitable and scalable services for telco. And bear with me at the end, I also have a bit of an announcement in the line of the rest of the presentation and the theme of this event here. First of all, as a way of introduction, our vision for the telco is that we try to bridge essentially, these kind of devices, being mobile and smart connected devices, to the cloud. And of course, using all of the assets the telecom operators have from a regional cloud, data center, or even edge type of environment. This is a vision, by the way, that we share with our partner, Intel. Obviously, we want to do this in an open, standard-based, as you probably heard that quite a lot of time. And we definitely want to have it sustainable, and sustainable in more than one meaning, for sure. Definitely non-competitive and respecting your business model. And if COVID has taught anything to us, we want to be solid and we want to be absolutely resilient in everything we do, because that's probably the lesson learned from the last 2 years. Quick, fast facts about Lenovo for the ones who don't really know about us. You probably know us from the PC industry. We are a 65 billion company, 75,000 employees. We operate in 180 countries. I think relevant for this audience, through the Motorola brand, we were the first with the 5G handsets. Last week we had again another series of announcements. So we have definitely stepped up our Motorola business and our handset business to make sure that we also capture the 5G capabilities out there. The data center group represents 40% of our business, total business, and that's everything that has to do with compute, storage, and security, obviously. We're probably not the biggest one in server volume, but by far the number one in terms of performance and in terms of resilience. So that's a quick intro about us. So let me dive into the topic of today around edge computing. I think we've not talked about it this morning, but a lot of the data that we talked about has been created outside the walls and have been managed outside the walls of a data center. It's been exploding, I think, everywhere. We see this rise in every type of data and data points that we see. I read a couple of times ago that we create per day the equivalent of 12 million Blu-ray, and that's twice the size of the Eiffel Tower if you stack them up. So, and that we do on a daily basis. Yes, we manage more and more of that data. Yes, we kind of analyze more and more of that data, but we get a tsunami of data coming in here. Obviously 5G, and if you reach that 45% mix of 5G versus 4G and other technology in a couple of years from now, but 5G will show that we will go to around 50 megabyte per user per month per phone. So that tsunami of data is just flowing. I was reading this morning the news from Vodafone. They reckon that they will have, we will have around the world around 88 million devices that are in fact talking to each other. So it is clearly just a tsunami, and as we have this network effect of connected device, this data is going to be more and more generated. So let's have a quick definition on edge computing, if you allow me. So edge computing is really bringing computing capacity outside of the data center in the smallest and the simplest of form. For telco, it means an opportunity for new services. It definitely means an opportunity for innovative kind of value proposition. Think of different use cases. If we think IoT, Internet of Things, smart devices being connected, you need some point of aggregation, you need some local computing. But if you are in the enterprise business, so in the enterprise serving medium size or small and medium size or really large enterprises, you need some form of enterprise edge interface where a lot of the computing, a lot of the high performance, high availability services, think S/4HANA applications, for instance, are being deployed. And if you are in the radio business, obviously 4G, but also 5G will drive a need for low latency, high capacity data type of environment, obviously. And if you move into Open RAN and 6G, that requirement around connectivity and latency is just going to be increasing. But if data, and in particular edge computing, is being deployed where data is being created, we believe there is a tight integration again with AI. Probably not of the scary bit on ChatGPT type, but as the telco value proposition is really about transporting the data, managing the data, securing the data, storing the data, and computing the data. We believe AI and machine learning are certainly components that ties very nicely together with edge and edge platform, edge computing platforms. Think of it this way: if you are in the IoT aggregation space, you probably need a lot of that connectivity. You probably need that very skinny type of intelligence, type of engine that needs to work for you. But we probably need mid-size or mid-level type of business criticality and business continuity and security. But if you move to more analytics type of environment where you have to do predictive or even prescriptive type of analytics environment, for sure the connectivity is still there. Certainly the security component is just raised a notch, and the business continuity and business criticality is also stepping up a notch there. So we believe these two environments are absolutely tied to each other and also tied to the various applications the customers will be using. Obviously, the challenge for telco is that it has to be very scalable. We're thinking hundreds and thousands type of deployment per site, per units in total. And obviously, it has to be significantly profitable. So that's where a lot of the components in this computing needs to be addressed differently than in the data center. Obviously, once you are outside the secure walls of a data center, you're not in that secured environment, protected environment, and obviously environmental controls, environmental thermal cooling space, and all of that comes to play. you are in a very different place from an applications perspective where you could really manage very tight application stacks or software stack. You need to go into a virtualized environment with containers and virtualization techniques that you may want to have to scale out the applications components across the infrastructure. More importantly, the logistics is probably one of the most killing elements we've seen so far. When you have those truck rolls that cost you anywhere between 500 to 600 euro, but you only can charge 1,000 euro per month, those logistics need to be completely redone in a different way. And that's where we believe also the deployment schemes that you need to deploy here needs to be completely automated and certainly remote managed. I think guns are the day where you could pre-factory load everything, do staging and warehousing, and put that and try to do some manual truck rolls where people would go on site and manually install, or even if you would do a remote installation, but still with some manual intervention. So the next steps of what you really need to be able to deliver has to be completely remote and really also completely automated to capture that kind of investment and the return of the services. Obviously, what we want to share with you is one of the striking case we have done a couple of times ago. This is the customer that has deployed 65,000 virtual machines in one go. This is kind of scale and kind of profitable rollout that we are certainly talking about here. And you see some of the business case results here. I think most strikingly here is the significant reduction in deployment time, 80% time less spent in really all this manual work. That automation really kicks in there in a large way. The engineering and the capabilities of the teams being really more deployed, and so you have less time spent on managing all the devices, all the applications at the same time. And in this particular case, 22 days were basically the net gain in terms of the project deployment for this massive deployment, 65,000 system. Security is probably the biggest elephant in the room, obviously, certainly in a highly regulated environment like the telco industry, making sure also that the customer, the end customer, the enterprises, or even the consumer customers have really the confidence in the deployment and basically everything that's been offered as a service here. When you deploy that edge computing, you don't want to have anybody, pulling the cables off and running away with the device. So we will have, motion and temper detection, making sure the machines goes into freeze mode whenever there is any movement of that machine. And even if somebody would run away with the hard drives in the machine, all that data is still completely encrypted and not available. And in terms of remote maintenance and the ability of not touching the device, we know in the telco industry, the more we touch everything that's going outside in the network, the less profitable it becomes. We definitely want to have the option of offering artificial and augmented reality. So somebody that is non-trained, non-educated in the IT could still service and could still interact with the device being deployed in the far edge of the network. Last but not least, on this part here, we want to also integrate everything from an edge computing that is relevant from a cloud, and certainly learning from the hyperscale space where we want to have everything done in a cloud fashion. So clearly having the three schemes of cloud infrastructure, either you deploy a cloud by having open source type of techniques, open source type of environments, or you go Red Hat or VMware, making sure you integrate all of that into your cloud services. And we are a hardware provider, so offering choice and options for us is certainly a significant contributor. At least we see it as a contributor to provide that profitable and scaled in different use case formats. As an example, and we are running the video outside, so if you want a little bit more about that, we've done something exactly along those lines with the city of Barcelona. It's a smart city environment. As you can see on the left-hand side, these are street cabinets. You don't even have much room. You know, you didn't even probably not even have room for the cables in there, so it's a very harsh environment, certainly from a temperature perspective, or you know, high and cold in Barcelona. But more importantly, in terms of the services, there are 7 use cases that the city of Barcelona have been deploying using that edge computing and that automation that I referred to. It goes into things like smart tourism with augmented reality, crowd control, street security, and a lot of other type of applications that are very relevant for the citizen and the tourists in the city of Barcelona. What I wanted to also share with you is this automation scheme that we have, allow you to basically manage, deploy, do the asset management of every of the device going out there. But we have also a secret ingredient inside this automation tool that we call the blueprints, which is also addressing that manual task and repetitive task. In the case I was referring before with the 65,000 systems being deployed, there's more than 500 different tasks that were in fact automated with the blueprint scheme. So not only we were able to manage the inventory being deployed, managed to be able to deploy all the equipment outside, but we were also able to capture and simplify all of the deployments of these repetitive tasks. All in all, we believe Edge is a fantastic opportunity for telco, certainly in terms of having a profitable and scalable services. There's a lot of components that we have stacked up together and that we have experience on that we can certainly share, allowing certainly the zero-touch provisioning, the security dimension, making sure we have the application marketplace so customer can relate to the different use cases and applications that they want to have, and obviously turn this as a service to tie this with your own services opportunity here. I promised an announcement, I think in line with the theme of the event. We're announcing CO2 offset services. We basically offer an offset on all of our equipment. So we have done the analysis, I think, that Roman was mentioning, going through all of the scope of the equipment that we produce, upstream, downstream, and the one that we also have, and have validated all the numbers to an external company. So every of our product now, certainly the ones that we want to offer to the telco customers, have a CO2 measurement. But behind this, we offer the services to manage all of that management of the emission equivalent, making sure we are completely compliant with your governance body and your reporting schemes, but also tie this completely into your most favorite UN project and making sure all of that CO2 offset goes in the right projects that you want to support also. So we believe it's quite innovative, and we believe it's our contribution to, a very concrete contribution to the green emission all in all, and making sure that we also participate in the scope 1, 2, and 3 of our customers and partners. If you want to know more, we are around the door, and we are part of the working group. Obviously, my email is in there. And Wim, I think I capture baton for you.
Thank you, Dominic, and thanks to all the speakers. I think all the speakers want to share a lot of information with all of you, and they're all around for the next 2 days, so that's good news. We still have 2 full days left, or almost full days left, to discuss all the topics we have heard about. I just would like to conclude with some housekeeping rules. I will not go through them, you received them already. What is important is that if, in case you go to another working group which you were not registered for, please introduce yourself up front. There is a good website with all the agendas, as I've mentioned. We will have the walking tour starting at 6:15 in front of the hotel. Please join us. It will be a very nice historical tour across Berlin to the restaurant, where you're all welcome. And we will also then take you back to the hotel around 11 tonight. So looking forward to network as much as possible. I've already mentioned this. Thanks again to all the sponsors. I've mentioned them. And I also want to I like to thank my team. I want to thank Andrea, Ruxandra, Ayush and Lyuba for helping to set this up. This is pretty complicated and a lot of logistical issues need to be solved. A lot of things happen behind the scene. I really want to thank the four of them for making this event happen. And so please talk to them also in their working groups. So no time for Q&A, but as I have said, almost 2 full days to discuss. And let's start the discussion now in the coffee break. Thank you.